for him. It's like more than just our instrument, but now
Absolutely.
when we go back home, right? Like, what situation are you going to face when you get there? Is your worship going to stop there? Is it going to be about just the music?
Right.
What
Absolutely.
do you do?
Yeah, a lot of times people say worship, and they are talking about music.
Right.
Musical worship is different than worship. Worship is a lifestyle.
Yeah.
You know, so I worship God in how I dress. I worship Him with my profession. I worship Him at home with my children, the way that I teach them or raise them. Just everything I do is an act of worship as a believer and a follower of Jesus Christ. So music is one expression of worship, you know, that we do here on Sunday and Thursday. And but it's a lifestyle. And I find that is the important thing, because we don't get the practice time that we need all the time. But if I've been with the Lord all week and I only get to practice that Thursday or that Saturday, then God is glorified. I believe God is glorified. And it shows because my heart is in the right place, you know, because you can have all these hours of practice, but if your heart is far from Him, you know, then it's like a clanging cymbal to Him, I believe. And also, you know, He says, people worship me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. So it has to be about the heart.
Doreen is preaching right now. She's preaching right now. Like it's like, for real, there's a lot of clanging cymbals out there.
Yes.
All right, there's a lot of clanging cymbals out there, and the last thing we want to become is another clanging cymbal. You know, I don't know how many times I've been in churches where the intentions are good, but there's no foundation, you know? And what we do here at Commitment is we try to be very open about that, you know, like try to understand that there are worshipers that just need a little help understanding how to play, how to sing. We give vocal lessons. We try to, you know, get with people during the week. Part of my job, even today I got with James, right? He's our resident bass and guitar player. You know, we took like an hour or two to just kind of go over songs before rehearsal, you know, before rehearsal. And yeah, in a perfect world, not every worship leader is full-time at church. I try to make sure that I honor my team by giving them the time that they need, because I work here full-time. So if they're available, you know, they can come in, they can practice. But then there's those cymbals, those clanging cymbals that they might be super talented. They might be amazing at what they do, but then their attitude stinks. Right. You know, their hearts are not in the right place to actually worship God in the right context of what God has called us to worship. At home, they're a different story. They're not, you know, what you see on Sunday. It's a different story. You know, I grew up in a church, and, you know, and that's not to say any church can have. My pastor always corrects me. I say, you know, in the Spanish church when I say, but he says, you know what? It's every church, Norby. You know, it's like black church, Asian church, yellow church, purple church, no matter what church you go to, there's always the issue of the heart that we have to address at all times. You know, how is it for you when, you know, let's say you don't know a certain song, you don't feel super prepared, you know, and then you have to come in on rehearsal. Maybe you don't have a rehearsal, but you know, you're coming in on Sunday, right? And you're available. Because I'm one of those guys. I'm like, you know, I'm one of those worship leaders that says, listen, I'd rather have you here worshiping the Lord with us as a team than to feel that you're not prepared. In a way that, you know, I mean, again, let's say a vocalist, right? A vocalist can feel unprepared to sing a song lyrically, right? But they're still worshipers in my book, right? So they should be able to still lift their hands, guide people into the presence of God through their posture of obedience. A musician, it's probably, I mean, we could say it's the same thing. There's the notes, there's all the arrangements, you don't get that. What do?
Well, I believe God kind of keeps me in that place where I'm not quite prepared. Because I find that if you prepare too much, it can be a work of the flesh, or you're going through the motions. So again, he keeps me with an open heart and a broken heart, and kind of prepared enough, but not as I want to feel prepared. Like, I've got this song down, you know, and it's perfected.
Absolutely.
And, you know,
See, I understand where you're coming from. Yeah, because I feel the same way,
Yeah.
and it's almost like, what do you tell people that, may not have the time? We got people like in our team that can't make it to rehearsals. They can't make it. They're working,
Yeah. So
and
God will give me a little something to focus on. If it's 3 notes
Sure.
that he wants me to play throughout the song,
and he will use
3 notes or just a portion of the melody, a little bit of harmony, just something simple that I can do, that he can use, as opposed to me doing a bunch of stuff, feeling so prepared, feeling great,
Because here's the funny thing. Here's the blessing, and you could call it a curse, you guys out there, however you feel, right? But I think it's subjective to the leadership and the atmosphere that you're in your church. Here's the situation. Sunday morning, we rehearsed, we did everything we had to do. All of a sudden, pastor looks at you and says, Doreen, play something for us.
Right. So that's where the skill comes in. You do need to be skillful.
Right.
I don't know what your question was. I didn't mean
to
interrupt.
I was giving you that platform to just now speak into that.
Okay.
What do? I mean, the pastor's there now saying, hey, play something for us. Not unrehearsed. I'm just I'm padding on just a few chords, and it's all you now.
Yes. So I do believe you do need to be skillful.
Yeah.
The Bible talks about that, playing skillfully. So you have that, and that comes with consistency. So that you fall back on that always, your skill. If I don't know the song, I know the key. I know different keys that I can play in. I can play in all the keys. I'm comfortable with that. So that's what I would tell someone. You have to be able to play in different keys and different types of music, and be sensitive to the spirit.
Yes.
That's a part of the skill that you do need to have.
Yeah, it's almost like a language. Be fluent in your language, because you never know. Like right now, I'm putting you on the spot here, and we didn't rehearse this. We didn't talk about this. We just said, hey, I need you to come in next week and sit down and just talk with me, and because you're fluent in your language, you're able to at least, communicate, right? And I think as a musician, we're in the same place. And I think just like even now, like when we spoke before, I was like, hey, I'll guide you through this. We'll talk. We'll just have a conversation. Holy Spirit is the same way. It's like, I'm going to guide you through this. I'm going to have an internal conversation with you, because you've taken the time to have a relationship with me.
Right.
And then when it's time for someone to ask of you, and your leadership or your situation, your atmosphere calls out for you to now act on, fight versus flight type of thing, you know what to do. You're ready to respond to the call. When it comes to family dynamics, I think about this all the time. Like, my wife is also a worshiper. She's called to the women. She's called to children. I know you are the same in that sense, where I can relate, where you're called in multiple platforms. You're not just a worshiper, but you bring this to the children. You're a teacher by profession.
Yes.
But you also help here once in a blue for the children. And I think,
I used to do it once a month when my children were in the youth program. Well, they're youth now. When they were a part of the children's ministry, that was my give back, to give one Sunday a month to help with that. But yes, I'm called to teach, and children. I work with children in middle school, and so it's a juggling act. But that's never an excuse to not do what you're supposed to do, what you're called to do. And I had a friend of mine tell me, once I became a mother later in life, I didn't have my kids until I was like 38 or so. Oh, that tells my age. But anyway, I found that I was complaining to a friend saying, I don't have time to pray and whatever. And she's like, you have to fight for your time as a mother, And so you do have to fight for your time as a mother, as a minister, as a musician, whatever that God has called you to do. You have to fight to do those things that God has called you to do, because there's so many things. So you may have to juggle, but that's never an excuse to not have a relationship with God, to not do the things in your local church that God has called you to do, to not, so.
Right. Absolutely. That's important. I think in the family dynamic of things, we are going to be faced with situations that are questionable to our faith sometimes, and we think, why us?
I think God is always growing us, getting back to your question about the multicultural environment here. And I've talked to some musicians that have come and they've said, where do you guys get these songs? They haven't experienced it before. I say, God is stretching you. It's about opening your mind and heart and seeing where God is going to take you.
Absolutely. That's amazing. And that's so cool that, God can do that through us. My prayer has always been to bring, just different people, different, just talents, like I know in churches that, in our district, I've seen a whole brass section. I've seen, and they'll bring them up in Christmas time. You'll have choirs. We've dabbled with that a little bit here with choirs during resurrection services and stuff like that back in the day. I'm currently now working on putting kids, on stage with their instruments. If they're in school taking up an instrument, then they can actually worship with it here too. And give them the opportunity to really grow up as we did, right? Just playing and worshiping since we were young. And that's why we're here. This generation of ours had the opportunity where things didn't get overcomplicated by technology, rundowns and all this different stuff and clocks on the screen and all this. We just went to church and worshiped and we were all family, and that made it work.
I was thinking about my aunt. Her mother had a church in Trenton on the corner. Well, the bar was on the corner, and we were right next to the bar. Every New Year's Eve, the people would wander in from the bar, so that was always funny. But she started a little band with us. So my cousins were on trumpet, my sister was clarinet, my other sister was violin, and I was flute. And you can imagine it didn't sound that great, but that, like you said, that was the start of just learning to just avail yourself to the Lord, and
absolutely.
And,
we have
worship.
to start somewhere, right? There's churches that in that sense have never even seen that many instruments. You'll go to churches where they never saw a flute player in the worship team. They never saw I don't know, a drummer have more than 7 cymbals on his, drums, or, whatever the case may be, and I'm even one of those worship leaders that love to arrange music.
That's what I was going to say. We write songs here. And that's unheard of for a lot of churches.
I go to a lot of friends and, hey, why do you guys have such a big, beautiful church? Was there any space to carve out a music studio in there and just have, have you sit there and write music and, record it and give it to the people? And, we do it here where we take the sermons and we write to the sermons, and God blesses the word that comes from God there through our pastor, and then it makes it into song, and then we get to minister that way, and have the freedom to produce the music, and just have a space that we can come in and do that. We feel inspired and we can sit in the studio and just, really do what God has told us to do on stage, translate it over onto a CD and give it to the people, and when you have your connection groups, your cell groups, your all of those moments where you guys are gathering even outside of the church, you have a tool. You have a tool that you can pop in and say, our worship team sings this song about this sermon. So, and how many times have I stopped listening to the radio because they're playing stuff right now that I'm not really connecting to because, the message is saying this, and I'm one of those guys that I like to connect my whole journey in life. It's like I'm driving the car. I know so many people that when they park the car, it's like they got to time it when the song is over. It's like now I can shut off the car and get out of the car because the song is over. When I pull out, a new song starts and I'm journeying back home wherever I got my milk, eggs, and butter and whatever. It's a journey to me. Life is a journey. And I think that if we're intentional about how God has a journey for each and every one of us that's unique, we would hear him more. We would feel him more because we're being intentional about that, and that's how we can then now navigate through this life, all the
Yes.
noise that's going on. We know how to silence it because we're journeying with God, and that's so important because then
Yes.
we don't know. We don't know how people are coming in on Sunday. We don't know how we are as worshipers coming in on Sunday,
Right.
and then expected to bring people to the throne room, and it's tough,